Hello and welcome to this edition of Talk to Al Jazeera. I'm Ghida Fakhri in New York. Our guest today is the Libyan leader, Colonel Muammar Gaddafi. Thanks very much for joining us. You spoke before the UN General Assembly for more than 90 minutes and harshly criticized the UN's power structure and talked about the need for profound reform of the Security Council of the United Nations and its charter, which you tore up while you were at the podium. The UN Security Council reform has been an issue of debate for many decades. Do you really think that the permanent 5 Security Council members will now relinquish their veto power?
They gave themselves this right. We did not give them this right. That is dictatorship. That is illegal. How can people give themselves the right to cancel UN decisions? How can 190 nations take a decision that would later be cancelled by a Security Council permanent member? This is unacceptable. If they do not want to cede their seats, let them have a Security Council of their own, made up of 4 or 5 members, and use their veto right against each other. But we cannot take this situation any longer. We will establish a new Security Council. These 4 or 5 veto-yielding members might find themselves left alone.
You criticized the Security Council and you even called it the Council of Terror, yet Libya is a member of the Security Council. Isn't there a contradiction there? And don't you think by being a member of that council you are in fact an accomplice to many of its actions or lack thereof in many cases?
This is routine to have Libya assuming its role in the Security Council. Now the Security Council and the United Nations are subject to indictment. That is why I did not attend yesterday's Security Council session, or the session held on September the 24th. I did not attend this session because I said what I think of the Security Council. It was not convenient to attend this session. It was attended by a Libyan delegate.
What statement, though, were you trying to make by not attending that Security Council meeting? Because you were quite positive about the President of the United States. You even called him your son at one point and the son of Africa. And yet you refused to attend this council meeting that he chaired.
When it comes to the Security Council, my opinion is very clear. From now on, I do not accept the Security Council. I call upon all nations to stop recognizing the Security Council as of now. Its existence is illegal, unacceptable, and non-democratic. We will not attend its sessions. We will not recognize it at all. I called upon the world to stop recognizing the Security Council from now on in its current form. It is useless. 65 wars have happened and the Security Council did not deter the aggressions. What is the Security Council? It is a tool in the hands of the major powers using it to serve their exclusive interests.
You also proposed that the UN headquarters should be moved outside of New York. Is that really a serious proposal, or was it some kind of an oblique reaction on your part to the kinds of limitations that were imposed to your visit here and the fact that the authorities in the city didn't allow you to pitch your tent in Central Park as you might have wished?
This should have been examined on the 50th anniversary of the United Nations. It took us 14 additional years to examine the proposal to move the headquarters. I'm serious about it. Everyone agrees. People are tired and exhausted from traveling to New York. This is unnecessary. Why do they have to travel across continents and oceans to come to New York? This is illogical. It started in 1945, but why should it continue until now? People need a headquarters in a central location, like Sirte or Vienna, easily accessible without complicated security measures because the USA is targeted by Al Qaeda. Sirte or Vienna is not targeted like the USA. Or let us allow the Eastern Hemisphere to have the honor to host the headquarters, as it has been the case for the Western Hemisphere, such as India or China.
Why did you decide to attend this year's UN General Assembly session, having been in power for 40 years and not done so before? Why now?
Why did I attend? It is because I hold the rotating presidency of the African Union. I had to attend the UN General Assembly and address it on behalf of the AU. My statement was on the behalf of the AU.
You've also been calling for the creation of a state called Israeltine, which really would be a one-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian problem. This is an issue that hasn't been called for by the Palestinian Authority, by the Arabs, the Europeans, or the United States. Everyone is talking about a two-state solution. Do you really think that the Palestinians need to review their strategy and work toward a one-state solution?
Those who talk about a two-state solution do not know the demographics of the region. They do not know that the establishment of a so-called Palestinian state will mean Israel will have a depth of 14 kilometers. The Israelis will not accept this. It is not possible to have two states. They do not know how interconnected they are. Neither is it possible to separate the two states. They are intertwined. There are 1 million Palestinians living in the 1948 territories in so-called Israel. There are 500,000 Israelis living in the West Bank. Gaza is isolated. How can you say two states? They are integrated and torn up. They constitute one state now. They should ensure the return of the Palestinians who were expelled. Weapons of mass destruction should be abandoned. The problem will end there. Another reason is that many parties want to get rid of this problem in any possible way, in order to say that this problem is over. Once, the president of a European country said that we do not think like you about the future of our sons and grandsons, nor the future of Palestine. We want a solution right now that will end this headache. If they want to fight each other in 40 or 50 years, let them do whatever they want. We want a quick solution now. I do not want to deceive people or endorse such a futile solution. I want to think about a radical solution that will protect both the Palestinians and the Israelis and convince them to accept each other and live in a democratic state.
But is it a realistic solution, though? The President of the United States has been calling for two states living side by side. In fact, this time President Obama went even further than his predecessor by calling on Arab states to recognize Israel as a Jewish state, which would have major implications on the right of return for Palestinian refugees and possibly the likely expulsion of 20% of Israel's Arab population. Do you think that President Obama is really serious about bringing peace to the Middle East between these two countries?
All these considerations clarify my previous answer. I do not think that President Obama is fully aware of this problem. It was not part of his concerns. He was a senator and was concerned about the state he represents, the US people and internal matters. Thus, he does not know everything about this cause. He might be able to understand it in the future. As I said earlier, it is totally impossible to have two states.
But Obama does enjoy a lot of goodwill from the international community. You were also praising him during your General Assembly speech. Do you think that he is able to and willing to put enough pressure on the Israeli side to bring about that kind of long-lasting peace between the two?
No one can exert pressure on the Israelis. They are the ones who can put pressure on the USA and not the contrary.
What about the Arab countries? Shouldn't they be doing more?
The Arabs know that what they're doing now is not the right thing to do. When they sit alone, they admit it. However, they are riding this wave, calling for the Palestinians' rights to have their own state. This is not easy. First of all, there is the Dimona nuclear reactor and Israel's ownership of weapons of mass destruction. No one raised this issue. This is extremely dangerous. How can the Arabs and even the Muslims recognize the so-called Israel while it owns a nuclear arsenal? This is impossible, unless they also enjoy the right of having their own nuclear arsenal. There is also the refugees problem. There are 4 million Palestinians who should return. This is the basis of the problem.
How concerned is Libya about Iran's nuclear program? Because there have been claims made by the United States recently that many Arab countries in private have said to them that they are very concerned about Iran, and which leads them to believe that some Arabs feel more concerned about Iran's nuclear program than they do about Israel's proven nuclear arsenal. Is that the case?
This is a reality. The Israelis consider that if Iran keeps its nuclear weapons, it might use them against them. Arabs, or some Arabs, sometimes expect that the Iranians might use these weapons against the Arabs, based on the sectarian divide between the Sunni Arabs and the Shiite Persians. They fear the expansion of the Iranian Revolution, the Islamic Revolution, or the Islamic Caliphate, or Persians' ambitions in the region. This is what Arabs say, especially in the Gulf region.
But do you think they should be concerned about Iran?
If this is what they think, they will definitely be worried. In all cases, it is dangerous to have Iran, the Arabs, or Israelis owning nuclear weapons. It constitutes a danger for everyone, and we should face it. It would be even more dangerous if one party owns nuclear weapons and the second one does not. This is a danger threatening the peace and safety of the region.
Let me turn to another file that has been very much in the limelight recently and surrounded by quite a bit of controversy, and that is the case of Lockerbie. The Security Council put Libya under sanctions in the aftermath of the blow-up of a Pan Am flight over Lockerbie in Scotland. You eventually handed over 2 Libyan nationals. One of them, Abdel Basit Ali al-Megrahi, who was convicted for life, was recently released on humanitarian grounds. He always maintained his innocence, yet he was convicted for this crime. In 2003, you wrote to the UN accepting responsibility for the actions of Libyan officials, and you paid $2.7 billion in compensation. In 2007, though, the Scottish Criminal Cases Review Commission concluded that there might have been a miscarriage of justice. Even though al-Megrahi has been released, will you still appeal? Do you still feel that he, and by extension Libya, and yourself, Colonel Gaddafi, were on trial and were unfairly convicted?
The Lockerbie problem is over, at least from the legal point of view. It is over and part of the past. He has the right to appeal and was about to file an appeal, but his condition deteriorated because of the serious illness, and he had to return to Libya. It seems that his return to Libya blocked the appeal.
But would you like to see the case appealed? Do you still believe that Libya, at least in the court of public opinion in the West, has been unfairly convicted?
This problem ended. It is not possible anymore to talk about clearing Libya or not. Whatever happened, the problem is over. Abdul Basit was the only person who had the right to appeal to the European Court. But as I said, because of his illness and release, it seems there is no need for appeal.
Quite a bit of controversy, though, has surrounded his release. And there have been suggestions and claims that there were deals that have gone on between Libya and the United Kingdom, oil deals that led to his release. And you yourself, Libya, in fact your son, has said that the question of Megrahi's release was always on the agenda of any Libyan-British trade talk. Can you clarify this? Was there some kind of a deal or a quid pro quo?
Not at all. This is not true. This is meaningless.
Was there any kind of an agreement that went on behind the scenes that led to his release?
No, it's very clear. He had this illness. Consequently, they were compelled to release him because of this disease. There was no deal or anything else.
Let me move on to Africa and the role of Libya within Africa and your vision for that continent. The President of the United States will, I presume, push forward with the plans that President Bush, his predecessor, had for AFRICOM, a military US command for the United States in Africa. How do you feel about an expanded US military presence on the continent?
The idea of AFRICOM was suggested under the previous presidents, and namely the former US president, but it was strongly rejected by all the African countries. Despite all US attempts to convince them, the idea was rejected. Obama has a totally different policy. He does not want to involve the US in such problems or any foreign interference. I think the AFRICOM problem is over.
Do you believe that Obama will not pursue the same policy and in fact pursue this idea of having AFRICOM on African soil? And as Libyan leader and as chairman of the African Union, would you welcome such a move? How would you feel about this?
Obama will not pursue this matter because it was over even before he came to power. It was over even before George W. Bush came to power. They abandoned it after all African nations rejected it. This matter is over and there is no need to raise it again.
You've been in power for 40 years now, which is a very long time. Aren't you tired?
I feel more tired tonight than in the past 40 years. I have been out of power since 1977, when I gave the power to the people and the society of the masses was established. It is the people's rule. I was not assuming political or administrative burdens. The reason is that I have been out of power since 1977, when I gave the power to the people. The administration is managed by the popular committees. Politics is managed by the popular congresses that comprise all the Libyan people. Libya is self-managed by the people, the popular organizations and the popular committees. This is a direct popular democracy. The burdens fall on the people, not on me.
But you are still the leader of the Arab Jamahiriya of Libya. Would you one day consider passing the reins on to someone else, the younger generation? Is that a thought that crosses your mind?
I'm not the leader of Libya. I'm the leader of the revolution. The revolution is part of the past and took place in 1969. Consequently, there is no need to talk about who will replace me. I do not have any power to delegate to my successors. The power lies with the people. This idea is irrelevant.
You say that you're the leader of the revolution, but don't you think that even a revolution needs new blood to sustain itself and revitalize itself?
This will be achieved through the popular congresses and the new blood injected in these congresses, in the popular committees, the revolutionary committees, the trade unions, the socialist popular leadership. All these are components of the regime of the society of the masses that welcomes new blood and new generations. Change is constantly underway in Libya. The secretariats of the popular congresses and the popular committees change constantly, but the people remain in place and hold power.
How much longer do you see yourself holding on to this position? And what is it that you still haven't achieved for Libya that you would like to do?
If we raise the Libyan people's awareness of the Green Book, we could create a model to be followed at the world level. But in fact, Libya was colonized, retrogressive, under military rule, poor and underdeveloped. The awareness was backward and not up to the idea of a society of the masses. This is what we feel sorry for. I wish this was not the case. I wish the Libyan people had a different level of awareness. Should this kind of regime be submitted to another people with a high level of awareness and culture, it could have been a model to be followed by the world.
Do you feel that Libya has now made that shift from so-called pariah status, at least in Western eyes, to being a full-fledged member of the international community and really playing a significant role there?
Libya has never been isolated. If it was boycotted by the major powers, they say it was isolated. Libya enjoys diplomatic relations with all countries of the world, except the USA, after relations were severed. Britain severed its relations for a limited period of time and then resumed them. All financial and commercial relations, travel, etc., with all countries are good. The only thing that has been unjustly and oppressively imposed on Libya was the air embargo. But the air embargo disappeared later on because the countries were reckless about the Security Council decisions that became unjust, deceitful, and of double standards. That is why some countries abandoned the decision to impose an air embargo on Libya. This is what happened.
How would you describe your relations today with the United States, and how important is it for you to have good relations with the Obama administration?
Nowadays, our relations with the US, Britain, and all other countries are good. I think it's beneficial for both the US and Libya to develop these relations. After bilateral diplomatic relations were resumed and the Lockerbie problem ended, the US companies that used to work in Libya before being withdrawn have returned to the oil fields. US investments are back in Libya. Obama's regime or administration is an exceptional and new one. Should things go towards change, as he has announced, I do not think anything will hamper developing our relations to the maximum. The USA did not benefit from the boycott. On the contrary, it lost. Even Libya lost, but its losses were less than those of the USA. US companies lost billions when they left Libya. They were replaced by European, British, and Chinese companies. Now they are keen to invest back in the Libyan market.